This week, May 18th through the 22nd, you guys, we are reviewing division. So this is not new content. However, it has been a while since we have actually practiced this skill because we've been focusing on new content such as, your fractions and your decimals and multiplying two digits by two digits. So I made this video to remind you guys about the DQ strategy. That is the strategy that you learn in fourth grade for division. There are other strategies, I just want to make that clear, but I am only going to focus on this one because I don't want you guys to get confused, and I want you to see what you remember from before. And this is a really good strategy as well, and some of you are already very familiar with this. So let's go. All right, the DQ strategy. First example we're going to look at is 148 divided by 4. DQ, just a reminder, this first D stands for a divisor, which is the number which the dividend, which is the 148, is being divided to. Okay, 148 is the dividend, and the dividend is the number that is being divided. And the quotient, which I know you guys probably remember, is the answer in a division problem. And so you're going to see these terms later this week with your division choice board. So I just wanted to make sure I briefly talked about them. All right, so when you are dividing using the DQ strategy, you are going to take the divisor and you're going to create an array. You're trying to see how many groups you can make of 148 out of 4. So our first array here we have is 4 times 12. And a 4 by 12 array equals 48. Array, that's a familiar term as well. That's when you arrange objects, numbers, and different things into rows and columns. So I'm trying to give you guys a visual here. Maybe mentally you can think about it. So 4 by 12 equals 48. So I'm going to subtract 48 from 148 because I need to change my dividend. I've made 12 groups which have a value of 48, so I need to change my dividend now. So when I subtract when I subtract 48 from 148, my answer is 100. Okay, now I'll come back over here and I create a new array. I know quarters. I know about quarters, I know money. I know 4 quarters equals 100, so I am multiplying 4 times 25, which equals 100. 100 minus 100 is 0. The last step here is to go to my quotient column and add the answers I have here. So when I add 12 and 25, my answer is 37. There is no remainder here for us, okay? Now, if you were wondering where I got these numbers, we normally create a box here. So we think about our multiplication, we think about, based on what my dividend is, I ask myself, can I multiply my divisor by 100 or multiples of 100? In this situation, we could not because obviously 4 times 100 is 400 and that number is too large. So we can think about our multiples of 10. Yes, I could have said 4 times 10, but because I knew some of my basic facts, I knew that 4 times 12 is 48, I used that. But if you chose to do 10, there was nothing wrong with that. Okay, and then we have our basic numbers between 1 through 12 that I did not have to use this time around. Okay, so let's take a look at this same problem really, but I just decided to use a multiple of 10 this time. So we're still dividing 148 by 4. But here I decided to use a multiple of 10. I decided to go with 4 times 30. I know 4 times 3 is 12, so 4 times 30 must be 120. I'm going to subtract from 148, and I get 28. Okay, 8 minus 0 is 8, 4 minus 2 is 2. And we know 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay, moving on. I know my basic facts, so I'm thinking about numbers 1 through 12. 4 times 7 will give me 28. Again, 28 minus 28 is 0. I move over to my quotient column and I add the numbers I have here, and 30 plus 7 is 37. I just gave you 2 examples of how you could solve 148 divided by 4 using the DQ method. Either way is correct. All right, moving on to our second column. This time we are dividing 177 divided by 2. We're still thinking about our box of numbers here. I'm going to rule out multiples of 100s. I cannot take 2 and multiply by 100 here, because it would give me 200. And 200 is too large of a number, okay, because my dividend is only 177. So I move down to my multiples of 10s and I start thinking about. I'll start thinking about how I know that 2 times 20 is 40. 2 times 30 is 60, right? And I keep going, and I get to 2 times 80. And I realize that that's 160, and that's very close to 177. So I decide to write that in my quotient column. 2 times 80 is 160. Next, I subtract. 7 minus 0 is 7. 7 minus 6 is 1. Now my number is really small. My dividend has decreased to 17. So now I know multiples of 10s will not work. So I'm thinking about my basic facts between 1 and 12. And 2 times 8 is 16. So I write that here, and I subtract 17 minus 16, which is 1. So here we actually have a remainder, also known as the leftover, what we have left over here, because it turns out that 2 does not evenly divide into 177. So we were able to make 88 groups of 2 with a remainder of 1. And I know it's been a while, but we always ask ourselves how to interpret the remainder. So I wrote a word problem below using this division problem, 177 divided by 2. What do you do with the extras? And I'm talking specifically about remainders. There are 177 pencils and 2 students. A teacher wants to give the same number of pencils to each student. How many pencils will each student get? What do you do with the remaining pencil? Well, in this situation, I would say the teacher is just going to keep the pencil for herself, because it would not be polite or would not be nice to break it in half and give half to each person. That wouldn't really make sense. So a teacher would just keep the pencil for herself and let each student have 88 pencils. So again, it depends on the context of the story, and we will talk more about interpreting a remainder and looking at more word problems with that in our Google Meet sessions this week. So, because we know how to divide, our standard that we're looking at this week as 4th graders, you are supposed to learn how to divide a 1-digit number into 4-digit numbers. So, I don't want you to be alarmed. Yes, your dividend is much larger, but you're using the same skill, the same steps over and over again. Notice my box. The only thing different here is I added 1,000s. So sometimes you could think about multiplying your divisor by a multiple of 1,000. Okay, we're not going to do it here. Why? Hopefully, your thinking led you to the fact that 6 times 1,000 is 6,000, and our number is much smaller than that. So we're not going to use the 1,000s, but I can start thinking about multiples of 100. I know that 6 times 100 is 600. I know that 6 times 200 is 1,200. Well, I cannot use 200 because that is more than 1,197. So I'm going to stick with 100. 6 times 1 is 600. I'm going to subtract. 7 minus 0 is 7. 9 minus 0 is 9. Uh-oh. I cannot take 6 from 1. So I immediately realize I need to borrow. I did not write it here because my thinking process, when I have a 1 in a thousands place, I know that it's going to become a 0, and I'm going to add those those 10 hundreds here to my hundreds column, and it's going to become 11 hundreds anyways. So I just go ahead and look at it as 11 minus 6, which is 5, okay? Now, my numbers are much smaller. I know that I cannot use the thousands. I cannot use multiples of hundreds anymore. So now I'm thinking about multiples of 10. Okay, of course I know that 6 times, 6 times 10 is 60. Okay, 6 times 20 is 120, but I know I'm going to keep going. And I know that 6 times 9 is 54, so 6 times 90 will work for me. 6 times 90 is 540, and 540 is less than 597. So I begin subtracting. 7 minus 0 is 7. 9 minus 4 is 5. Okay? So now I have a new dividend. It's changed again. And it's much smaller. It's 57. I can no longer use a multiple of 10, but I can use my basic facts between 1 through 12. And because I already know that 6 times 9 is 54, and that's really the closest I'm going to get to 57, I multiply 6 by 9 and I get 54. I subtract, and 57 minus 54 is 3. There's that remainder again. Don't forget to go back to your quotient column and add the numbers you have here in this space. So 100 plus 90 plus 9 is 199. So my answer was 199, remainder 3. Again, the remainder is all about the interpretation. We do not have a context here, a story problem. So when it's just written just like this, you just answer it. Now, if it was in word form, you have to pay attention to the question. Okay? Let's look at one more. And I decided to do one more with you because in this situation, we actually will multiply by 1,000. We are dividing 5,327 by 4. I realized that 4 times 1,000 is 4,000. And this time, my dividend has a larger value, so it will work. So 4 times 1,000 is 4,000. Now I'm going to begin subtracting. 7 minus 0 is 7. 2 minus 0 is 2. 3 minus 0 is 3. 5 minus 4 is 1. Okay? So my new dividend now is 1,327. The 1,000s are out. Can't use that anymore because my number is smaller. I can think about multiples of 100. I know that 4 times 100 is 400. That's pretty small, so let me keep going. 4 times 200 is 800. That's still small, but let's see if I can get any closer because it's going to save me some time and steps. 4 times 300. Well, that's 1,200. That's the closest that I can get using a multiple of 100. So I'm going to start subtracting now. 7 minus 0 is 7. 2 minus 0 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. So my new dividend now is 127. Now I'm thinking about multiples of 10. Okay? 4 times 10 is 40. 4 times 20 is 80. That gets me close, but I can get closer. 4 times 30 is 120. But I think about my basic facts, and I know that 4 times 31 is 124. And that got me even closer. So I decided to go with 31. And now I'm going to subtract 127 minus 124. 7 minus 4 is 3. And 12 minus 12 is 0. So I have a remainder of 3. I go back to my quotient column and I add here. 1,000 plus 300 plus 31 is 1,331. My entire answer is 1,331 with a remainder of 3. Now, when you're working through it, you're going to follow the same steps, but your column, your quotient column, the numbers might be different. Use your own discretion. You may need to go smaller sometimes. You might try to stick with numbers that only end in 0. But I want to say, think about how many steps you want to do. Because the smaller your numbers are here, the more steps you're going to have to do. And the more steps you're doing, the more you open yourself up to making mistakes. So think high, think large right away. You can do it. Okay, hopefully I'll see you guys in our Google Meets next week. Again, this was just review. Keep practicing. watch this video as many times as you need to, okay? See you guys.